Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Rusty with Intero Real Estate Services, and welcome to Real Estate with Rusty. I'm here with my co-host Danielle today.
Hi.
And what we're going to be talking about is the buying process for purchasing a home here in the Silicon Valley or the greater Bay Area. And what we hope to do is really simplify the process for our buyers.
Indeed. And simplifying the buying process has about 4 parts.
This is correct. So we're going to be talking about, first of all, basically the general facts about real estate, just kind of some economics 101. And then in addition to that, we're going to be talking about the current events and what's going on in the real estate market today. Also, we're going to go through the buying process, what it takes to buy a home from start to finish, basically from the time that one decides that they want to purchase a home all the way until they get their keys. And then in addition to that, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a buyer and what are some tips that they can be successful in trying to get their offer accepted in a multiple offer situation.
All right, so the facts. Markets are cyclical. There is an upswing and a downswing with every market. And real estate, as we know, is a scarce resource right now.
That's true.
And especially in Silicon Valley, it feels like it's been a bit more scarce. As supply and demand dictates prices, right? And as our supply goes down, the demand goes up, and so prices and values also go up.
Yeah, so exactly what you're saying. It's like, you know, the markets are cyclical. They definitely can go up and down on a short-term basis, but over a long period of time, real estate has always appreciated in the past. I've never met anybody that bought a house in the Bay Area and regretted it 10 years later, right?
That's right.
And that's because over time, it's definitely a great investment.
Yeah, and over time meaning, you know, when you purchase a real estate, you want to make sure that you're thinking long-term.
Absolutely.
You know, you want to be thinking in 3, 7, 10-year increments. You're going to want to hold on to it for some time. So, the other great thing about real estate investing is that there is an inflation hedge. The value of money goes up and it goes down, and just like, you know, the value of your property can go up and down, but over long term, real estate always goes up.
And over the long term, yeah, money goes down in value. So it's kind of like if you keep your money in the bank, that's actually an asset that's going down in value, whereas if you put that money into a down payment for a home or you purchase a home, it's going to be going up. So it's a much better investment than just keeping cash on hand.
That's right. The other perk about owning real estate is that there are some considerable tax benefits. You get a mortgage interest deduction, right? And then you also get a property tax deduction.
Absolutely. But it's very important that you talk to a tax advisor about that to make sure, because every situation is definitely specific, but there's many tax advantages to owning real estate, certainly.
Yep, that's right. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to remind everybody of is that Santa Clara in itself, the valley, is very unique. We have incredible schools. We have a lot of jobs, right?
Absolutely.
We have industry diversity. Not everything is tech, but there is a lot of that. And then, you know, we have great weather.
Yep.
Great location. You can literally drive from the beach to the snow in one day, you know. And we have a very cerebral community here. A lot of very intelligent people have moved to this area. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a great place to live and it attracts a lot of smart people.
Exactly.
All right.
Current affairs, right now we have a historically low inventory, meaning that the number of homes for sale is very, very low. Yeah,
we have actually one of the lowest inventories that we've ever had in the Silicon Valley and the Bay Area in general, and really this is true throughout the country as well. The number of homes for sale in Santa Clara County, for example, is about 1,000 right now. And just to kind of put that in context, about 2011, there was probably 3,300 homes for sale, and a much higher demand now than there was back then. So obviously that's, as you were saying, short-term supply and demand will dictate prices, and that's why we're seeing such rapid appreciation. There's definitely some reasons why we have low inventory right now. I think one of the things is that this is just one of those areas where a lot of our population is aging in their homes and they've decided to stay as opposed to move to downsize for various reasons. One being that, you know, their property taxes are very low and buying a new home might not be the case.
That's right.
And so they want to stay. And so that's one of the reasons that there's very low inventory, as well as obviously a high demand, so people are purchasing these homes as quick as they come on the market. And then the third reason is that we really haven't had a lot of brand new construction within the Bay Area or within the country actually at all in the last decade, and especially from 2000 2008 to 2013, there was very little building. So we've seen very few brand new homes come on the market as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. And so with that, the increase in market values has gone up in Silicon Valley, and we have a lot of cash buyers that are coming in. So this is, I think it's about 1 in 4 buyers are paying solely cash, which is definitely an advantage when you're a buyer.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that it's important to point out that probably in a normal historical market, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 11 homes would sell with just cash and no mortgage. Whereas right now, like you said, it's 1 in 4, 25%.
Yeah.
But that also means that 3 out of 4 sell with a mortgage.
Exactly.
So if you're a regular person like all of us, buying a home with a mortgage is definitely not impossible. Although you may be competing against cash offers, there's definitely ways to win out anyway.
That's right.
And we'll be right back after the break.
How do you advertise your business? Are you relying on signs and flyers or using an online campaign? Did you know that TV ads and commercials are the most proven method of promoting or attracting new customers to your business? Whether it's a sole proprietorship, a family business, or a corporation, marketing your business with A&B is the best return on your advertising dollar. So the question really isn't whether you should advertise your business with A&B. Rather, it's why you wouldn't. Contact us to find out the various commercial packages we have to offer.
When it comes to selling a home, most homeowners want to know they're working with the best realtor to maximize their sales price. If receiving the highest possible price for your largest investment is the goal, then hiring the right agent matters.
Hi, I'm Rusty Pop with Intero Real Estate Services, and I'm really excited to have the honor of presenting this property.
Rusty Pop of Intero Real Estate Services provides superior knowledge of real estate market trends as an extremely active agent in San Jose and the Silicon Valley with a track record of selling throughout the Bay Area. Specializing in 3 keys to getting the top dollar: preparation, presentation, and promotion, Pop Properties has a custom marketing plan for you. Rusty and his team offer a concierge service to get your house on the market and looking its best. We take care of all the details to make sure your home shines to attract the maximum number of buyers, and combined with our worldwide global marketing strategy, we ensure the maximum competition for your home. When buyers compete, sellers win. Specific services offered include a concierge coordination of repairs, cleaning, storage, high-end and extensive marketing, and professional custom staging designed specifically for your home. We can even coordinate a full remodel of your house for you. Staging, high-end, state-of-the-art photography, a lifestyle video, and global marketing all come free when you list your home with Rusty Pop. If you're looking to list your home or simply want to discuss its value in today's market, don't hesitate to call 650-793-9575. So as we mentioned, one of the things we want to talk about also is really understanding our real estate market and understanding the difference between our market and maybe other markets that you might hear about. So I like to really break it down into categories of macro markets and micro markets. And what I mean by that, a macro market is very general. Like, the United States has as a whole a real estate market. The state of California has a real estate market. The county of Santa Clara, the city of San Jose, or even one neighborhood within San Jose is going to be its own micro market. And it may be different how buyers and sellers are interacting in any given one of those markets. And it's important to differentiate when you're looking at homes, because if you're comparing the way that the market is reacting or how buyers are competing in one area to another, you may actually end up overpaying, or you may end up making offers that are not as advantageous to actually being accepted. So it's super important to really keep in mind, specifically where you're looking and how is that dynamic happening in that one given neighborhood. Also, it's very important to keep in mind that the media doesn't look at it that way. So when you're actually hearing, the news talk about the real estate market or what's happening in real estate these days, typically they're behind the times, meaning that they're really reporting on what's been happening maybe over the last 6 weeks or several months. And real estate actually can change more quickly than that. So it's important to really kind of keep an eye on things with a professional real estate agent or a little bit more hands-on than that. Also, the media is very general. So they will say things like, for example, that the real estate market is up 27% over year or something of that nature. And the funny thing is they might be talking about the United States or the whole state of California, whereas maybe in Sunnyvale it's double that, or maybe it's half that. So it's really important to know that those averages over a large geographic is probably not the best way to gauge things. So a really good example of the media kind of sort of misleading in a way in regards to the way that the market is right now is, I heard in February there was a bunch of reports out that the market had slowed, right? Which gives the impression, of course, that the real estate market has slowed down. But what they actually meant was that the number of homes coming for sale had slowed, which actually makes the market more active and more aggressive. So the headline was one thing, but the actual content of the article was the other. So it's very important to be kind of a little cognizant of that. Also, we want to keep in mind geographical differences. How far away is one particular neighborhood from the very best tech jobs? Or how far away is a neighborhood from hospitals and schools, especially the good schools, because everybody knows how much of a driver that is when it comes to price.
Yes.
Speaking of which, a lot of people don't really know about the schools and how that works. Would you like to kind of share a little bit about the school situation?
So just a tip about schools. When you're looking at schools and you're looking at ratings, the rating for a school is generally falling between 1 to 10. So an 8 would be a pretty good school. There are also API scores, but if you've seen those, they generally haven't been updated since 2013. So the best thing to look for is really that rating from 1 to 10.
Yeah, and that rating comes typically where people look is a website called greatschools.org, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that buyers use, so that even if you don't believe in those scores, that's what your competition is using, right? So it's important to know that. Another thing about schools is I really encourage my buyers to actually go and visit the schools and actually talk to the administrators there, see what the schools actually look like, talk to the neighbors about how their experience has been raising their kids in that neighborhood, because it's not really all about the test scores. There's a lot of other factors that I think should be
there are special programs and special funding for different projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we want to definitely keep our eye on geographical differences, also proximity to certain amenities like we were just talking about. In addition to that, property type differences and keeping in consideration how close a property is to other types of property. For example, if a home is right next to an apartment building versus being next to other single-family homes, that's gonna have an effect on the value.
That's right.
Also, being on a busy street versus an interior street is going to have an effect on the value. And it's super important to know what that effect is going to be when you're actually out making offers on homes. In a market like today, where things are very active and buyers are having to compete, having a busy street, for example, is going to have a very low discount, meaning that it's almost going to sell just as high as a property that's not on a busy street. However, when there's more of a balance of buyers and sellers, the cost for that busy street is going to be quite different. Actually, there's going to be a huge discount for it because buyers have choices.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting and also something to really keep an eye on when you're out looking at homes. We've already kind of gone over the market dynamics and the supply and demand thing. We've gone over a lot about the understanding our markets and the general facts about real estate. What about the process itself when it comes to actually the nuts and bolts of moving through the real estate process to buy a home?
Yeah, so the buying process is not as complicated as it seems, right?
That's true. A lot of moving parts, but definitely not as complicated as it seems.
Yes, so the first step is to get a qualified realtor, right?
That's definitely going to help a lot.
It's definitely going to help. It's going to give you that edge. And then also, upon your initial meeting with your realtor will sit down and talk with you, hopefully, about what your needs are, your desires, what are your negotiables, what are your non-negotiables. And you'll notice that your list might change over time, but that first line of communication being open, everybody understanding what it is that your goals are to help you support you along that process. It's good for everybody to understand your goals so that we can all support each other in reaching that goal.
And also, it's really good if you're working with a realtor that's going to kind of talk about some of the stuff that we're talking about here today.
Yes.
That way, you're going forward knowing the facts about real estate as well as giving them a really good idea of what you absolutely need in a home.
So that's the first step. The second step is a very thorough pre-approval process. So this is where you find out what you're qualified to purchase. This is your ticket to the game.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So in order for you to get this, you're going to need to sit down with a lender, and you'll have to bring in your pay stubs, assets, generally the stuff that you would present if you're doing your taxes, and then from there we would see what we would be qualified to get.
Yeah, so it's very important actually to get vetted out by a really qualified loan officer, and it's going to help in a number of ways. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to take a look at your pay stubs, your bank statements, stock statements, tax returns, W-2s, etc., just to make sure what you qualify for is solid and 100% approved, because a lot of people in this area, they have their money tied up in stocks and they want to cash that stock out for down payment, and there's a process for that the bank is going to look at very, very closely. In addition, we have a lot of RSU income, we have a lot of bonus income, and all banks look at it differently and have different ways of calculating it. So it's very important to talk to somebody that really knows what they're doing. That way they can really avoid any surprises like towards the end when you actually get into contract.
Yes, that's not when you want to surprise.
Yeah, you definitely want to have the surprises come up first so that you can definitely get through them and then move forward from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So once you know what you're qualified to purchase, that's when you start touring properties with your realtor. So depending on your criteria and what you're looking for, you will start to look at homes. And this can be very fun. It also...
It depends.
Fun is a word. But it's an interesting process because over time, seeing properties and seeing what's out there, you notice what your non-negotiables are, and you stick with those generally, and then everything else that's an extra is basically just a bonus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've found actually it ends up being more a process of elimination than selection, because you find out what you really need and you find out what you don't care that much about. And in our market, it's super important that you get that all out of the way.
Exactly. Yep. So that's touring. And then once you're done touring, you found your perfect home, right? You're going to sit down with your realtor and you're going to write an offer.
So the offer writing process is not complicated either. Your realtor should definitely have a lot of experience writing offers and know exactly what the contract says. There's a lot of terms that are involved that are super important, and we're going to try to break those down right now so that it makes a lot of sense. And the number one term that I think everybody's thinking about is, what is the price? So the way that a qualified realtor is going to help you arrive at the right price to write your offer at is really going to be based on an analysis called a comparable market analysis. It's going to be based on what the homes in that particular neighborhood that are very similar to the one that you're looking at have sold for, especially recently. So what we typically do is we look for homes that are similar square footage, same bedroom count, same bathroom count, usually within a half a mile radius. Sometimes half a mile radius might mean that it crosses over a freeway, so we'd have to take maybe some more geographical things into account, but generally a half a mile radius. And then we compare that house to the house those houses to the house that you're buying, and we actually make adjustments the same way that an appraiser would in order to figure out what the market thinks of your house and where you should be at in order to make a competitive offer. Because again, with a competitive market, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make a really low ball offer, because the seller's going to have options, unfortunately, for the buyers.
Right.
So it's really important that we go through this analysis process, and then in addition to that, it's really important before even going into the terms of the offer, besides the price, is really looking at the condition of the house.
Right. So with conditions, you have inspections. There are other factors depending on like the age of the home, how well it was kept. Are you going to replace a roof? Are you going to have to deal with termites, foundation issues? There's a plethora of... Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of things. Yeah, absolutely. And so 9 times out of 10 in the Silicon Valley, and this is not the case in the rest of the country or even really the rest of the Bay Area, but 9 times out of 10 in our area where we're at, the homes actually come on the market with inspections and disclosures filled out by the seller. So the condition of the property, provided that those inspections are reliable, should be very well known and documented before you even make your offer.
That's right.
Now, if you're in another market, for example, the Central Valley or even the outer parts of the Bay Area, you'll find that that's not going to be the case. So you're going to just write a contingency in to your contract somewhere between 7, 10, 17, or 21 days for you to do those investigations for yourself, because it's really important to know exactly what it is that you're buying. So the inspections come into play. Once we've determined the price and we've more or less determined the condition of the house, then it's really time to talk about the rest of the terms and what should be expected of the offer. So number one is, what is the down payment that the buyer is going to be putting down? And in our market, it's anywhere between 3% all the way up to 50-60% down payments. It really depends on a buyer's ability to put money down, of course. So the initial escrow deposit, or some people call it the earnest money deposit, that's something that we write into the contract, and it's negotiable. You can put $1,000 there, you can put 1%, but the standard is 3%, and 3% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a $500,000 home, then the escrow deposit would be $15,000. That money does not go anywhere until the actual offer is accepted, meaning the seller's actually ratified your contract, and then you usually have anywhere from 24 hours to 72 hours to put that money in escrow. And it's just a regular personal check will suffice for that 3%. Once that money's in escrow, it's important to know that most contracts will have contingencies. Contingencies are clauses in the contract that will allow a buyer to back out for certain reasons. And during that contingency period, your 3% deposit, or whatever the number may be, is refundable, provided that you're canceling your contract for one of those specific reasons that you have. And what a contract is usually contingent upon is, number one, the condition of the property. So like I said, if there's inspections done already, it might be advantageous to not have a property investigation contingency. But if there's not inspections done, then you may have a contingency for that. A reason in the contract, a clause that allows you to back out if the condition is such that you don't want to buy the house anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's important that you're able to get your money back if that's the case. Another contingency that's very common and important is the financing contingency. We talked about getting your loan approved by a really good loan officer, somebody that knows what they're doing and can really look at all your documentation. But there's another layer to getting an approval from a loan, from a bank rather, and that's actually the underwriter approval. And so it's important for a lot of people to have a contingency for their loan to go through underwriting and be approved by the person at the bank that actually stamps you're ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then the third most common contingency is also for appraisal. This is very, very important because what it says is basically that if the house doesn't appraise, an appraisal, by the way, is a report done by a third party who's a licensed person in evaluating real estate prices. And they will tell you what their opinion of the market value of that home is on a given day. And so a lot of contracts are contingent on getting an appraisal for the value of the purchase price. So what happens in our area a lot, though, is that there will be no contingencies, mm-hmm. or there'll be very short contingencies, specifically on property contingency and on the appraisal contingency, because properties are appreciating so quickly, it's actually very difficult for appraisers to keep up. The way that the banks have set appraisal guidelines is that they really have to look in the rearview mirror at what homes were selling for last week, last month, 60 days ago, 90 days ago, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And as a result, if properties have appreciated quickly, then market value today is actually higher than what it'll appraise for.
That's right.
In which case, a person might have to pay, in addition to their down payment, the difference between the appraisal and the purchase price. And that's a very complicated scenario, but it's also very common in this area. So when it comes to appraisal, it's really important for buyers to understand, what the market value of the home is likely to come out on an appraisal, so that way they can evaluate if they have enough funds to actually bridge a gap if there is one. That's what's really important there with the appraisal. And again, that's part of the contingency process. With the exception of the price, the contingencies, and the down payment, as I mentioned, there's many other terms in an offer, but those are the three main important ones. Also, of course, how long is the escrow going to take to close? Everybody wants to know when they're going to get their keys. So once you've written that offer, the next thing is that all of this is kind of like a package that your realtor should present to the listing agent and maybe even the seller directly. That way they can offer any answers to questions as the seller or the listing agent is going through the offer. So the next step after you put your money in escrow is to really make sure that the lender does have everything that they need. And if they need any additional documentation, you really want to get it to them as quickly as possible, because now we're in contract and there's actually timelines and time frames that have actually been set. So we put the money in escrow, get the bank information. The bank actually is who orders that appraisal that I talked about earlier. And then from that point going forward, if there are already inspections, then the buyer's not really doing much in regards to the condition of the property. If they need inspections, then they're agent is ordering those for them, scheduling them for them, and then ideally I think the buyer should show up to those inspections and actually hear what the inspector has to say, because it's way better to hear it from the actual person than reading it on a report, because things can seem like not that big of a deal when you read them, and they can seem like a big deal when they're not.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, so it's really good to be there if you possibly can. That's during the inspections. If everything goes right, your appraisal comes in, there's no issues with your loan, and if the inspections are good, then you move on to the next phase, which is really closing. And at that point, the last two steps are a final walkthrough on the house. And most homes are sold as is, meaning they're sold in the current condition. So really the walkthrough is kind of a formality. What you're really checking for as a buyer is to make sure that the house is in exactly the same condition that it was in the day that you wrote your offer. And around the same time, and this is anywhere from 3 to 5 days before the escrow actually closes, you're going to do your sign-off with the loan documents. So your loan has been through underwriting, it's been completely approved. They may have asked you for more documentation during that time because banks really want to know everything about you. And then they'll send those loan documents to the title company, you'll sign them, and then they'll tell you exactly the funds that you need in order to close. It won't be a surprise because it'll have been disclosed to you many times, but they'll give you the most updated numbers. You'll then return to them either a wire funds of your down payment and closing costs, or you'll send them, or rather deliver to them a cashier's check for all of those funds, at which time the signed loan documents will go back to the lender, and then the lender will review them and then fund your loan. So now your down payment's there, your loan's there, and actually it can close, meaning it can record on the county with your name on it. And that's generally speaking when you get your keys. And that's what everybody's waiting for.
Yeah. And that all happens at the title company.
For the most part, all of that happens at the title company as far as the signing goes and delivering the funds. And they do all the work in terms of getting the documents back to the lender to close out the deal.
Yeah.
So that's generally what happens to close it out. So we've talked a lot about the process. We've talked a lot about the market itself. And I think one of the things that a lot of viewers might really want to know is, really given this competitive market, how can they get their offer accepted? What tips do we have that can really not ensure that their offer is accepted, because you never know, but definitely give them the opportunity to have a better chance? And I think I have a number of tips. Number one always is work with the right realtor. And I think that's very important. And it's become more and more important every day here in this area specifically. What we find is that there's such a low inventory of homes, yet what people don't realize is that about 25% of the homes on the market are not on the market. And what that means is that they actually sell off market. So people actually want to sell their home, but they don't want to put it on the multiple listing service, which means it'll never show up on the internet. It won't be on Redfin or Trulia or Zillow. So it's really only sold within real estate networks. So working with a realtor that has access to those networks is very important. Also, another tip is to work with an agent that has a good reputation. You'd be surprised how many listing agents would prefer to work with one agent over another, and as a result are going to then do everything they can if there's a close offer to make sure that they work with that agent instead, because it makes everybody's life easier if everybody's competent on all sides of a transaction. And sellers put value in what their listing agent says. Obviously they wouldn't have hired that listing agent if they didn't trust them. So that's really important. And then writing a clean offer, meaning the contingencies being very, very short, or in some cases no contingencies. Short closes of escrow, sometimes allowing the seller extra time to move out of the property after the close of escrow can be very, very helpful. And then a personal touch, writing an offer letter, as they call it, where you tell the seller why you love their house so much and why you're going to carry forward their tradition of a really high level of maintenance. And by doing all these things, basically what I like to say is that we leave nothing on the table in terms of our effort. That way we know if we weren't successful that it wasn't because of something we missed. So we try to do everything we can on everything we do. And again, working with the right agent, putting together a solid package. And then the last thing is, if your agent is at all possible and the other agent is open to it, having a personal presentation of the offer can really make a big difference, because just like I said, working with an agent with a good reputation, sitting down face to face and going over the terms of an offer, you can really get to know a person, and as a result that listing agent will then engender support for you when they're presenting all offers to the seller. And that can be a very, very powerful thing.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Real Estate with Rusty. I'm Danielle Valley.
And I'm Rusty Pop, and we look forward to seeing you next week.